This is the W5FC repeater, PL110.9.
This is N5BB. I'll be starting Skynet here in a couple of minutes. If you need to use the repeater, please do so before I start the net. This is N5BB.
N5BB, N5MTV.
Yes, I'm busy with the net here. Can it wait till later?
Yeah, just saying hello, N5MTV.
Mr. Chairman, I need to make myself very clear. If we uplink now, Skynet will be in control of your military.
But you'll be in control of Skynet, right?
That is correct, sir.
Skynet.
This is N5BB. My name is Bill. I'll be your net control station for this session of the Dallas Amateur Radio Club Skynet. Skynet is a weekly net called every Saturday night at 9 p.m. concerning the subject of astronomy and space in general. Our purpose is to help amateurs become more familiar with the nighttime and daytime sky, astronomy, and space. This net is open to all amateurs interested in this topic. We encourage your participation, your comments, and your suggestions for this net. Stations with priority or emergency traffic may enter the net at any time using a # break in their call sign. This is a directed net. Please do not transmit without direction from net control. And stations are reminded to identify at the end of your transmissions. This weekly net operates on 146.88 megahertz with a PL tone of 110.9. Check-ins via Echolink are also possible using a W5FC-R station ID or Echolink node 37247, and I am monitoring Echolink. Tonight's topics, astronomy charts, pictures, and live audio-video links are available online. Go to www.w5fc.org right now for the complete list. Remember to tell others about this popular net. You can now check into the net electronically by going to the club website, w5fc.org. Look for tonight's Skynet announcement and click on the hot link to check in. We will acknowledge you on the air. Don't worry if you want to check in via voice or Echolink, we'll continue to do that. All amateur operators are welcome. You do not need to be a member of any amateur radio club to participate. The net is 90 minutes long, structured in several parts, which I'll whiz through. General announcements, Texas Astronomical Society of Dallas, National Space Society, the discussion topic of the evening, Was Up, Space Exploration and History, Constellation of the Week, Space Launches of the Week, Visible Satellite Passages of the Week, and that's about it. All amateurs licensed to transmit here are invited to check in. So now, currently, over on the web form, the following people are checked in. Robert, AA5AH, Chaz with Cat, KF5GHA, Tony, NT5TM, Tom, KE5ICX, and we now see Al, KN5EE. Excuse me, KN5EEE. So now let's go to RF check-ins. If anybody has a need for a short time, in other words, you can't stay here very long, so you're going to check in so you can make a comment or do something else, please come now with your call sign only. This is short-term check-ins. Again, this is Skynet looking for short-term check-ins. Nothing heard. Now let's look for RF check-ins. We'll do Echolink later. So if you'd like to check in RF, please come down with your call sign, your name, and your city. This is N5BB, and this is Skynet looking for RF check-ins.
This is Kilo 5 Whiskey Victor Lima, James in North Carolina. This is Whiskey 5 Golf Uniform Northeast Dallas.
Kilo Foxtrot 5, Zulu, Bravo, Lima, Bill, Farmers Ranch.
It's going pretty slow this Easter weekend. James, is your call, you broke up, is your call sign Kilo Golf 5, Whiskey Victor Lima?
Roger on that. KG5 WVL.
We got you, James. And I recognize Gus, W5GUS, and Bill, KF5ZBL. That's a short list. I got more now on the web form. Do we have anybody else that would like to check in on RF to Skynet? If so, please come down.
This is Whiskey Bravo 4 Mike Foxtrot India WT4MFI Ted Dallas Low Power.
And to recognize WB4MFI. One more try. Do we have any other RF check-ins to Skynet? If so, please come down.
This is Kilo Golf 5 Alpha Papa Lima, Patrick, and Richardson, and I'm here with
Kilo Juliet 5, India Juliet Kilo. This is Ann and Richardson.
Okay, I recognize KG5APL, Patrick, and KJ5IJK, Ann, both in Richardson. Good evening. One more try. Any other RF check-ins for Skynet?
Alpha Charlie 5, Victor Charlie, Cecil, Mesquite.
One more. I recognize AC5VC. We will have time later in the net to check in more later. Over on the web form, I recognize N5LIG Dale and N5MTV. Hello, Chad. Okay. Now it's time to look for Echolink check-ins. The only new person I see is Dan, AI5OL. You want to check in on voice, Dan?
Good evening, Bill. This is Dan, AI5OL, checking in on Echolink.
We got you, Dan. Okay, one last try. Do we have any other check-ins via any mode for Skynet? If so, please come now with your call sign, your name, and your location. Nothing heard. Okay, do we have any general announcements for the net? This could be something relating to amateur radio, astronomy, or space. Something just of general interest to him. If you have anything, please come now with your call sign only.
November Tango 5, Tango Mike.
NT5TM. Go ahead, Tony.
Good evening and thank you, Bill. Tonight's Afterglow movie discussion will focus on a big-budget blockbuster hit. Kind of odd for us. It's in color even, and stereo. Snowpiercer from 2013. This was a big breakout film for a Korean language director, although the film itself is mostly in English. Join us on this repeater at 10:30 or so p.m., 10:30, 10:35, to talk about the film. But remember, you don't actually have to have seen the movie to join in the net. You're welcome even if you just want to find out what it is we're talking about. There will be no RACES or DARC meeting on the air nets tomorrow because of Easter Sunday. No RACES, no MODA. Enjoy your night off. The White Rock Amateur Radio Club, however, will be having its usual Sunday brunch at VFW Post 6796 on Garland Road, behind the Sonic, and its usual Sunday Fox Hunt. Check out wa5wrl.org for more information. And last, don't forget that the Dallas Amateur Radio Club First Monday Ham Fixins Net is this Monday. Yeah, it's still the first Monday here this late in the month. And the Dallas Amateur Radio Club April meeting featuring Old and Young Timers Night will be this Tuesday. That's as late as it can possibly be. Check out W5FC.org for more details. Well, thank you for listening. This is NT5TM.
Thank you, Tony. Does anybody have any comments or questions about Tony's items? Are there any other announcements? Okay, on Echolink, I see Patrick, KG5, APL. Oh, you already checked in. Never mind. Sorry about that. Okay. Do we have any other announcements? AMSAT, the Radio Amateur Satellite Group, has 3 nets available to people in Dallas. Tuesday evenings at 8 p.m. Central Time, there's a national AMSAT net. Look on Echolink under asterisk, AMSAT asterisk. You can also go to www.amsatnet.com. This net is from Houston. But we've got 2 nets available up here in Dallas. On every Tuesday evening at 8 p.m., except the first Tuesday of the month, which is this coming Tuesday, which is repeater night, we have an AMSAT net on this repeater. But forget about it this coming Tuesday because it's the club meeting night. But on Wednesday night, there is a West net, it's the Metroplex, starting at 9 p.m. on the Arlington 147.140 megahertz repeater with a PL tone of 110.9 in positive offset. That means it's coming Wednesday at 9 p.m. on the Arlington 147.14 repeater. You can get on at 9 p.m. and talk about amateur satellites. The Dallas Amateur Radio Club has a number of nets starting at 7 p.m. on Monday evenings. This is N5BB, net control. The first week of the month, we have Ham Fixings week, net. So come on Monday at 7 p.m. on this repeater. It's coming Monday, and talk about different cooking things, restaurant reviews, anything at all about recipes and eating. There's other nets, other Mondays of the week. Saturday night is the night of nets. We have TechNet from 7 to 8 p.m. This net that you're listening to now, Skynet, from 9 to 10:30. And the Afterglow movie net from 10:30 to midnight. Tom, K5ICX, would you like to give us a clear description of what's going to be going on in the movie this evening?
Oh, I would love to, Bill. This is KE5ICX, Tom, down in Corpus Christi. Here it is. crawled along at 4 miles per hour. It inched through a crossing gate and lumbered on slowly. The engineer fell asleep several times, only to reawaken and alert the passengers to the same tired information. We're still on our way to Gary, Indiana. Our travel time, 3 years, 4 months, 5 days, 7 hours, 34 minutes, and 20 seconds. The train lurched to a stop. The engineer readjusted the time and added another 24 hours. Worse, the dining car bar was out of booze, and the people in last class were getting restless. But what do you want from a discount ticket that only costs $99 each way? Join us for, believe it or not, the critically acclaimed Snowpiercer from 2013. That's tonight at 10:30 p.m. You heard it. There's also a hot link to Snowpiercer. Just go look for it on the website. You'll see it there in the notes for tonight's net. Okay, that's it, Bill. Back to you, KD5, ICX.
Thank you, Tom. Also, the Dallas Amateur Radio Club meeting on the air is at 7 p.m. on the first and third Sundays of the month. This is N5BB, and this is Skynet. We're looking for additional check-ins. I see KQ4GKO on Echolink. John, would you like to check in on voice and tell us where you're located?
Well, I'm not sure how this is going to work. I haven't got my mic yet, and so I'm just working off of my laptop. But I am in New Bern, North Carolina, and just checking things out. Glad to be here.
We got you, John. KQ4GKO from North Carolina. And I'd also like to recognize on the web form Antonio, AG9SG. Hello, Antonio. Good to see you. Okay, do we have any other stations like to check in on any mode to Skynet? If so, please come now. Yes, John, as Todd typed there in the Echolink chat, your audio is very good, so it's working perfectly there on your computer. Okay, now let's move forward with the net. The next item of business is the Texas Astronomical Society of Dallas. Chaz, what's going on at TASS? KF5JHA, this is N5EB.
Thank you, Bill. Good evening, everyone. This is Chaz and Bob the Cat. Bob's wandering around, so he may pounce on the computer at any time. That could be a problem. Anyway, on April the 24th is the next Texas Astronomical Society of Dallas club meeting. The meeting is going to be held at 7:30 p.m. in person at the University of Texas at Dallas. That's on Campbell Road. And there's also a Zoom component for members. The feature speaker is going to be Dr. John Steele. His topic is going to be early history of astronomy. This could be interesting. I wonder how far back he's going to go. The Texas Astronomical Society of Dallas also hosts Saturday night public observing sessions in this area. Skynet was picked to be on Saturday night, so there could be an opportunity for live reports from the Texas Astronomical Society of Dallas public observing sessions. On the first Saturday of the month, stargazing is held at Fairview. Now, I'm not sure there was a clearing just before sunset. So do we have any amateur radio operator that's at that Fairview observing session that would like to make a report? Come now with your call sign if you'd like to make a report from Fairview. I didn't check. It may have been canceled either because of the weather or because of the holiday. I'm not sure. There's lots of things to see in the evening sky. You could have seen Venus kind of low in the west. overhead, almost overhead is Jupiter, and then there's nebulas like the Orion Nebula and double stars and all sorts of things up there in the sky to see. Anyway, you can check the Texas Astronomical Society of Dallas Club website at texasastro.org for up-to-date information and details about meetings and public observing sessions. This is KF5JJ, back to N5BB.
Thank you, Chaz. Do we have any additional check-ins? This is N5BB, net control for Skynet. Okay, next is time for National Space Society events and activities. My call is N5BB. I happen to be the National Space Society North Texas Chapter Vice President and Membership Director. You can reach me at space@byrom.net, SPACE@BYROM.net. The National Space Society is a nonprofit group based in the U.S., which is interested in the exploration and development of space and the creation of a spacefaring civilization. Our local National Space Society chapter website is ntx.nss.org. Our group also has an active Facebook page. Just type National Space Society of North Texas into the search box. The North Texas chapter of the National Space Society meets every month at 3:30 p.m. on the second Sunday afternoon of the month at Spring Creek Barbecue on Highway 183 in Irving. Our next chapter meeting will be a week from tomorrow on Sunday, April the 12th. On the last Friday evening of each month from 6 to 8 p.m., the National Space Society North Texas chapter sponsors a social event called Space Rendezvous at Cheddar's Restaurant, 700 West Highway 635 in Irving. You do not need to be a member of any organization to attend. The last Space Rendezvous was held on Friday, March the 27th, with 7 people at the event. The next Space Rendezvous dinner will be held on Friday, April the 24th at 6 p.m. The big National Space Society event every year is the International Space Development Conference, ISDC. ISDC 2026 will be held in Tysons Corner, Virginia, which is not far from Washington, D.C. The dates are June 4th through the 7th of 2026. Early bird discounts for registration ends on April the 15th officially. You can find out more at isdc.nss.org. That's isdc.nss.org. And I will be there. I'm planning on driving all the way up there to see some ham buddies along the way. If you have any questions about the National Space Society, please contact Bill, N5BB, at his QRZ listed email address or at space@byrom.net. End of topic. Does anybody have any questions or comments? Or would anybody like to check in? This is N5BB, and this is Skynet. Okay, I hope my voice holds out. It's been kind of hoarse recently. I apologize. So, we're now going to talk about something of great interest to the National Space Society and me personally. This is the Artemis II mission. The Artemis program, that's ARTEMIS, It's NASA's plan to get humans back to the moon and establish a lunar base. The last trip by humans to the moon was Apollo 17 in December 1972. That was so long ago, I was just starting college. That is a long time ago. Artemis II launched with very few glitches at 5:35 p.m. Central Time this last Wednesday, April the 1st, from Launch Complex 39B and Kennedy Space Center in Florida. This mission was named Integrity by the crew. So they're on an Orion capsule. The program, the whole mission is called Artemis II, Roman numeral 2, and the mission is also called Integrity by the crew. To see the NASA official YouTube continuous recording, there's a long link, which I won't try reading out, but if you do a search for NASA YouTube Artemis, I'm sure you'll find it. It's a continuous recording on YouTube, and you can go back and you can see what happened before the launch when they were fueling up the mission. You can see the launch. You can see all the news conferences. You can see everything they were doing in space. It's a continuous recording. It's really neat. So if you haven't found it, I strongly suggest you look for it. If you're on the if you can see the script that Tom is publishing, you'll see a link. But again, you can find it just by looking at NASA YouTube Artemis. I'm sure you'll be able to find the recording. An initial NASA news conference with Administrator Jared Isaacman and several other officials started Wednesday at about 7:15 p.m. This is just a couple of hours after the launch. There have been press conferences every day since then with mission updates. The latest press conference was this afternoon, and I've listened to all of those. The astronauts on the Artemis II mission are Commander Reid Wiseman, that's ReidWiseman, Pilot Victor Glover, Mission Specialist 1 Christina Cook, and Mission Specialist 2, the Canadian Space Agency astronaut Jeremy Hansen. Jeremy Hansen is the only one of those astronauts where this is his first mission. All the other astronauts have been on previous missions. Christina Koch has been on the ISS many, many hours. She may have a record. She's done an awful lot on ISS. But Jeremy Hansen is brand new. It's the first time he's been to space. The performance of the equipment and the crew of the Artemis II mission has been excellent so far. There have been some minor issues with the space toilet, which have been largely resolved. There have been some anomalies with one branch of the helium pressurization system. This pressurizes things like the fuel system, and they're now using the backup branch, but there's plenty of helium in it. One PC, which Christina Cook was using, failed, and I was listening when she was trying to get it fixed. She tried everything. They had her try all kinds of things, push this button while rebooting and do all kinds of things. It would not work, so it somehow failed. But the other ones are working. This is a test mission, and so it was expected that many minor issues would be encountered. 5 CubeSats were carried on this mission, and they were released into Earth orbit about 5 hours after launch. This is N5BB, and this is Skynet, and we're talking about Artemis II. At launch, the Artemis II craft was in a highly elliptical orbit with a high apogee. About 50 minutes, that's 50 minutes after liftoff, the ICPS, this is the Interim Cryogenic Propulsion System. I know it's a mouthful. It's the second stage of the SLS booster. And so the ICPS ignited for 43 at apogee to raise the perigee of the vehicle. So when the spacecraft is at the top of its orbit, when you fire, it will change the bottom of the orbit. So when it reached this new perigee near the Earth, they fired the 15 minutes of the surface module main engine, and they raised the next apogee to 44,000 miles. Once they did this, the Artemis II craft was in a near circular orbit, taking 23.5 hours. So it was a very high Earth orbit. This is N5BB. The European service module sits on top of the SLS rocket, and on top of the ICPS. So the European service module is connected to the Orion capsule where the humans are. So Orion connected to the European service module, then separated from this ICPS upper stage, and pilot Victor Glover performed an extensive series of manual proximity operations with the targets on the end of the side of the ICPS. So this ICPS is an upper stage, and so after they separated from it, they essentially flew around it, flew to the end, and looked at the target. And when they went up close, they maneuvered and moved all around. They were checking how all the reaction control things are working, how all the rockets were working, and it worked very smoothly. I remember Victor Glover saying, it works better in the real world than it did on the simulator. He was very happy with it. After they maneuvered near the end of the ICPS, they moved around to the side of it where there's another target and did the same thing. So it was a close maneuvering operation. They were just making sure they know everything about how the reaction control systems all work, because on the next mission of Artemis, they hope to dock, and they need all this for docking to work. After they finished all this, the Orion then returned to automated control, and the ICPS deployed the CubeSats and fired its engines, and it was destructively destroyed in the atmosphere. This is N5BB, and this is Skynet. After completing the high Earth orbit operations and system verification, Orion performed a 5-minute, 49-second translunar injection burn using the European service module that's mounted on the bottom of the Orion. It displaced the spacecraft on a trajectory toward the moon. The trajectory is called a free return trajectory, allowing it to loop around the moon and return to Earth without further propulsion, with only minor course corrections planned. The first 2 course correction burns have been canceled since they were not needed, because the excellent initial burn and navigation was so good that they didn't need the first 2 course correction burns. They'll probably need some later. Right now, Artemis II is much closer to the moon than the Earth. The Orion capsule with the European service module attached will arrive at the furthest distance from Earth on Monday, April the 6th, about 1:30 p.m. Central Time. The spacecraft will at that point be 252,757 miles from the Earth and about 4,700 miles from the far side of the moon. They will be further from the Earth than any humans have ever been, including Apollo 13. The Artemis II will return to Earth after after passing around the moon on the free return trajectory without further propulsion. Prior to re-entry, the European service module will separate from the Orion crew capsule, and the crew capsule will come down separately. It has a heat shield on it and parachutes, and it will land in the Pacific Ocean. This will be a high-speed return. The entry will be about 25,000 miles per hour. It's the fastest re-entry ever attempted for a crewed capsule. The Orion capsule will land in the Pacific Ocean near San Diego, California, no earlier than Friday, April the 10th at 7:21 p.m. Central Time. This is N5BB, and this is Skynet. So, the dates and times to remember. This coming Monday, April the 6th at 1:30 p.m. Central Time, the Orion capsule will be farthest from the Earth. They're actually going to see an eclipse of the sun by the moon back there. So they'll actually be witnessing an eclipse back there. And so Monday afternoon, they'll be on the far side of the moon. Then this coming Friday, April the 10th, at 7:21 p.m. Central Time, or slightly later, the capsule will be landing near San Diego in the ocean. Here's the background of the Artemis program. The Artemis I was a test flight to check hardware performance in space during a trip to the moon. Artemis II, the current flight, and III, the next flight planned for next year, are test flights to check hardware, including life support systems, and the ability of astronauts to control and monitor the performance of the Orion capsule during a moon trip. The goal is to prepare for landing on the moon with our 21st century hardware on Artemis 4 and 5. This is N5BB. Artemis I was an uncrewed mission of the Orion capsule on the new SLS, Space Launch System rocket, in November and December of 2022. They wanted to check the heat shield. They had some small problems with it, and they made some modifications for the Artemis II. Artemis II is a crewed test on SLS rocket. The launch eject system is armed, so they could have used it if they had trouble on the pad. And they're checking all the life support systems. Then playing with the temperature. The astronauts at one point were complaining about it being too cold, so they were changing that. As I mentioned earlier, the re-entry heat shield was modified. Artemis II has some similarities with Apollo 8, the first crewed spacecraft to reach the moon and go around it without landing in 1968. Artemis III is planned for next year, 2027. It'll be a crewed test in low Earth orbit of docking of at least one, but possibly both of the lunar landers from SpaceX and Blue Origin with the Orion capsule. This mission will test out propulsion, life support, and communication system of the landers, and testing the new spacesuits that will be used on the moon, the Axiom Extravehicular Mobility Unit. This will be a very busy mission for the crew. Again, planned sometime next year. Artemis 4 and Artemis 5 are planned to be the first two crewed landings on the moon in this century. At this time, the plan is for both these missions to occur in 2028. So, the goal of the current Artemis II mission is to check the hardware and the crew operation of that hardware. This is the SLS launch rocket, which is a liquid fuel main rocket with two solid boosters, similar to the Space Shuttle launch system. The interim cryogenic propulsion stage, this is the upper stage of the SLS rocket. NASA plans to replace the ICPS with the United Launch Alliance Centaur 5 for Artemis 4 and later missions. This will provide a higher performance second stage on the SLS launch rocket. The European Service Module, is then stacked on top of the ICPS. It provides propulsion, power, oxygen, and other things, water, for the Orion capsule, all the way until the Orion's ready to re-enter the Earth's atmosphere. There's then an Orion launch escape system, which allows the Orion capsule to be pulled away from the SLS rocket if there are problems during launch. Then there's the Orion capsule on the top. It's carrying 4 astronauts around the moon. Artemis II is testing and demonstrating optical communications to and from Earth using the Orion Artemis II optical communication systems, which uses laser beams. Such an optical system can be smaller and lighter than conventional radio and use less power while increasing the rate of transmission. This hardware is integrated into the Orion spacecraft. It includes an optical module, a 4-inch, that's 100-millimeter telescope with 2 gimbals, a modem, and control electronics. It's communicating with ground stations in California. It's sending back to Earth data with a data rate up to 260 megabits a second. This is N5BB and this is Skynet. This system is working. There's some amazing pictures that they've already sent from Artemis. Next year, Artemis III is planned to test the 2 human landing systems under development funded by NASA. There's one by SpaceX called the Starship HLS. This uses methane and liquid oxygen. Blue Origin has a consortium. It's called the Blue Moon, and they have the Blue Moon Mark II HLS. It's the second version of it. It's going to get to orbit probably on the New Glenn rocket from Blue Origin. It'll have a cislunar transporter, which is a space tug with a tanker, and a critical technology for Blue Moon is a solar-powered propellant boil-off mitigation mechanism. This will enable long-term storage of liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen at temperatures as low as 20 degrees Kelvin. Such a system will enable the spacecraft to loiter in orbit or on the surface of the moon, potentially allowing a permanent lunar presence or supporting nuclear thermal propulsion. I'm nearly finished. The Blue Moon system seems to be best for long-term operation of a moon base, since it is fueled by liquid hydrogen and oxygen that could be obtained in situ on the moon via electrolysis of ice found near the south pole of the moon. Where do you get the electricity? Solar power. This is the reason that Artemis IV and Artemis V are planned to land near the South Pole. That was a lot of information, but it's a very exciting mission. And if you haven't been watching any of the news conferences or anything else, you can go to that NASA YouTube recording, and you can roll right back through it slowly until you see each of the news conferences, and you can watch them in full. You can also watch everything that they've been doing up in space that's been recorded. It's great. By the way, there's some big solar panels that have been deployed, and those solar panels have cameras on them, and they can use it to do a selfie of the Orion capsule and the European Space European Space Service Module. That's all I got. This is N5BB, and this is Skynet. Do we have any other check-ins to the net? Does anybody have any questions or comments about the Artemis section I just said? Well, as you can tell by my attitude, I'm very excited about the Artemis mission today, and it's working so well. and the astronauts are also performing so well. It's really great. And they've got great cameras inside the capsule where you can see what's going on and everything. Okay, now it's time for What's Up, a Chaz. KF5JHA, this is N5BB. What's up, Chaz?
Thank you, Bill. Good evening, everyone. Once again, this is Chaz, KF5JHA. We call this segment of Skynet What Is Up because it's all about what has gone on astronomically over the past couple of weeks and what will take place over the next couple of weeks and beyond. That was slide number 2. By the way, I'm talking about slides. If you go to the YouTube version of Skynet, you can do that by going to W5FC.org, click on the link to the YouTube version. You can see the video version of Skynet with the slides and, well, all sorts of interesting things. Slide Master, slide number 3. We've talked about the predicted nova of T Corona Borealis, which may erupt at any time. It is currently at a brightness of around 10th magnitude, which is much too faint to be seen with just your 2 eyes. T Corona Borealis was supposed to go nova more than, well, a year and a half ago. One recent prediction was for T Corona Borealis to go nova on November the 10th, 2025. Well, that didn't happen. So another prediction is on June the 25th, plus or minus a few days. But when it does go nova, T Corona Borealis could become as bright as the North Star, which is 2nd magnitude. Now, I can see the North Star with just my 2 eyes from my very light-polluted location here in Mesquite, Texas. Slide Master, slide number 4. This image of the sun was taken on April the 1st. I grabbed that from the website spaceweather.com. The large sunspot complexes on the sun are so large at times they can just use your solar eclipse glasses to see them. No optical aid, just protection. Just the protection using the solar eclipse glasses. The sun has just passed its 11-year solar maximum. We're not quite sure when the solar maximum occurred, but it was probably sometime in 2025. Analyzing the data will determine which month it was. I presented information on the solar cycle just 3 months ago on Skynet. Slide Master, slide number 5. Full moon was on April the 1st, just a few days ago, so the current phase of the moon is a waning gibbous. On April the 7th, the moon is at apogee, which is the point in moon's orbit that is furthest from the Earth at a distance of 404,970 kilometers. Third quarter moon is on April the 9th. The new moon is on April the 17th. On April the 19th, the moon is at perigee, which is the point in the moon's orbit that is closest to the Earth at a distance of 361,639 kilometers. Slide Master, slide number 6. On April the 4th, Venus and the asteroid Ceres are in conjunction in the western evening sky. That's pretty interesting. Ceres you're going to need a pair of binoculars to see because it's too faint to see with your 2 eyes, but it's one of the biggest, maybe it's the biggest asteroid. Yep, that would be an interesting sight to see. If you've never seen an asteroid with, at all, you can use your binoculars to see it. A good star map would help. Slide Master, slide number 7. On April the 6th, in the southeastern morning sky is the conjunction of the moon and the bright star Antares. Slide Master, slide number 8. On April the 11th, the conjunction of the moon and Pluto in the southeastern morning sky occurs. Slide Master, slide number 9. On April the 15th, yep, that's tax day, there's a conjunction of the moon, Mars, Mercury, Saturn, Neptune, Vesta, Pallas, and the comet 141 P.D. McColt in the eastern morning sky. It's a really crowded morning sky. So wake up early on April the 15th and take a look in the eastern sky. Slide Master, slide number 10. On April the 19th, there's a conjunction of the moon, Venus, Uranus, and Ceres, Hebe, and the Pleiades star cluster in the western evening sky. Oh, so we've got a crowded western evening sky, too. Interesting. Slide Master, slide number 11. April the 20th, there's a conjunction of the planet Mars, Mercury, Saturn, Neptune, and Vesta, Pallas, in a again, that comet 141 PD behold in the eastern morning sky. Much to see over the next couple of weeks. This is KF5JJ, and this is Skynet. Slide master, slide number 12. Now, do we have anyone out there in Radio Land that have a question, or maybe you need a fill on any information, or maybe you just have a general astronomy question? My degree's in astrophysics, so maybe you can answer it. Come now with your call sign if you have a question or need a fill.
This is Kilo Golf 5, Whiskey Victor Lima.
Whiskey Victor Lima, please come now.
Chaz, I had a question. I was looking at some pictures I took of the comet Hale-Bopp, and I was just wondering when that will show up again. I probably won't be around when that happens, but I'd like to know. KG5 WPL.
It's a great question. I have to look it up, but I think it's several thousand years from now. I got some good pictures of Hale-Bopp too. That was with actually film. Now we don't even use film to capture pictures. There is another comet that could become very bright in the morning sky this month. I'll probably make a report on that next Skynet. So, hey, get your camera out. I hope it's a DSL LCD camera so that you can actually take some pictures, because film is kind of hard to find now. Did that answer your question?
Roger on that, Chaz. KG5 WPL.
Thank you for your question. That's what makes Skynet interesting, when we have some questions and some interest. So that's great. Thank you for doing that. So slide master, slide number 13. So the moon waned earlier this week. Well, actually, it's going to be waning next week. So to these words for this segment of Skynet: stay safe, keep well, pray for our world. It's the only one where humans live. And until next time, actually, I'll be doing another segment on Skynet in a few minutes. Keep looking up so you know what's up. And this is KF5JJ, and this is Skynet, transmitting on the W5FC repeater at 146.88 megahertz. Skynet is also available on Echolink. I've talked about that. And also on YouTube. Back to our net control. N5BB, it's yours.
Thanks, Chaz. This is N5BB. In the background on a computer, I am watching the live feed. In one portion of the screen, we see Capcom in Houston at Johnson Spacecraft Center, the control. And in the other part of the screen, we see a selfie showing the engine on the back of the European Service Module live from space. And at this time, the Artemis II is traveling at 2,021 miles per hour. It's 190,750 miles from the Earth, and it's only 90,864 miles from the Moon. So it's much closer to the Moon than the Earth right now, and traveling at over 2,000 miles per hour. It's kind of neat to have this live feed. Even if the astronauts are asleep, you'll see this live feed on there. They've been talking about their exercising. They have an exercise machine that's supposedly like a large shoebox. And it's got a flight wheel, and it acts kind of like a rowing machine. And the astronauts, they want to make sure all the astronauts use it so they can see how it works. They're also checking on the life support system, on how the increased breathing when they're exercising works with their system on Artemis. It turns out that their CO2 scrubber has worked better than expected. Okay, enough of Artemis. This is N5BB at Skynet. It's now time for the next section, which is Gus. Gus, can you tell us, W5GUS, this is N5BB, please tell us something about space exploration news in 5ED.
Okay, thank you, Bill. W5GUS here. Well, yeah, the defining event of this week was the Artemis II launch and all that, but let's not forget about the activity aboard the International Space Station. It remained high this week with a series of critical maintenance and resupply operations. A Roscosmos Progress 94, I think that's Soviet Union, Russian, Progress 94 cargo ship successfully docked in late March, delivering 3 tons of essential supplies to the space station and scientific experiments to the expedition crew. Astronauts also finalized preparations for an upcoming Northrop Grumman Cygnus resupply mission scheduled for early April. These operations ensure the continued safety and scientific productivity of the orbiting laboratory as it enters its final years of planned service. And the European Space Agency is busy also. They officially announced the EPIC program, European Space Agency Provided Institutional Crew, EPIC, project to secure more flight opportunities for European astronauts. This initiative involves chartering dedicated commercial missions such as SpaceX Crew Dragon starting in 2028. The goal is to ensure that European spacefarers gain the necessary long-duration flight experience before the eventual decommissioning of the ISS. This move highlights the growing reliance on commercial partnerships to maintain international cooperation in human spaceflight. Okay, and stargazers around the world were treated to the pink moon, the full moon of April, which reached its peak April 2nd. This lunar event was followed by Mercury reaching its greatest western elongation on April 3rd, offering a rare opportunity to see the planet low in the eastern sky before sunrise. Venus also continued to shine brightly as the evening star in the western sky. These celestial events provided a spectacular backdrop for the historic Artemis II mission and other space activities occurring throughout the week. Okay, and a little bit more about Artemis II. Mission controllers closely monitored a significant solar flare that occurred on March 30th, just days before the Artemis II launch. While the flare released a substantial amount of radiation, space weather experts determined that the majority of the energy was directed away from the Earth and the mission's flight path. This allowed the launch of Artemis II to proceed safely as scheduled on April the 1st. The incident underscored the critical importance of real-time solar monitoring for the safety of crews traveling beyond Earth's protective magnetosphere. Okay, let's move to space-related birthdays. March 28, 1946, Wubo Octels was born March 28, 1946. He was the first Dutch citizen in space, flying on the Space Shuttle Challenger in 1985. He conducted over 75 experiments on microgravity, focusing on materials, science, and human physiology. Okay, March 28, 1970, Sayan Proctor was born, 1970, March 28. first African-American woman to pilot a spacecraft serving on the historic all-civilian Inspiration 4 mission. She is also a geoscientist and artist who created the first Afrofuturist art in orbit. Okay, and March 29th, 1931, Alexei Gubarev, 1931, March 29th, commanded the first crew to board the Salyut 4 space station and the first intercosmos flight. His second mission included the first person in space who was not from the USSR or the USA. Okay, and next up is March 29, 1947. Alexander Viktorenko, March 29, 1947. He commanded commanded 4 missions to the Mir space station and spent over 489 days in space. He notably tested the space motorcycle, untethered propulsion unit, and performed 6 spacewalks. That must have been fun. Motorcycle in space. Okay, let's see, March 29, 1957, Michael Foreman logged more than 637 hours in space, performed 9 spacewalks during his 2 space shuttle missions. He was instrumental in the assembly of the International Space Station, delivering key modules. Okay, March 29th, 1965, William Hoeflin was born. He piloted the Space Shuttle Discovery on a mission to continue construction of the International Space Station in 2006. The mission successfully rewired the station's power system and delivered a new structural segment. Okay, March 30th, 1957, Yelena Kolukova, March 30th, 1957, the first woman to complete a long-duration spaceflight, spending 169 days aboard the Mir space station in 1994. She later flew on the Space Shuttle Atlantis to visit the Mir during the shuttle Mir program. Okay, March 31st, 1957, Patrick Forrester flew on 3 space shuttle missions, performed 4 spacewalks to help build and maintain the International Space Station. He later served as the chief of the astronaut office in NASA. Patrick Forrester. Okay, born April Fool's Day, April 1st, 1946, William Fisher logged 170 hours in space and performed 2 spacewalks to repair the CENTCOM 4-3 satellite during his mission. He also served as a medical doctor and was part of the astronaut selection board. Also born April 1st, but in 1973, Sergei Volkov, April 1st, 1973. The first second-generation space traveler, following in the footsteps of his father, cosmonaut Alexander Volkov. He commanded the ISS and has spent a total of 547 days in orbit. Okay, next is my favorite. Gus Grissom, April 3rd, 1926. One of the original Mercury 7 astronauts and the second American to fly in space during the Liberty Bell 7 mission. He later commanded the first crewed Gemini mission before tragically passing away in the Apollo 1 fire, along with 2 other astronauts. Okay, and the last birthday, also born April 3rd, Alexander Yablonsky, born April 3rd, 1955. Soviet cosmonaut selected for the Buran space shuttle program, who trained extensively as a test pilot. Although he never flew in space, he was a key figure in the development of Soviet reusable spacecraft. That's the last birthday, so we'll move on to this week in space history. April 3rd, 1966. Soviet Union Luna 10 became the first human-made object to successfully enter orbit around the moon on April 3rd, 1966. After a 3-day journey from Earth, the spacecraft performed a precise engine burn to transition into a lunar orbit. During this mission, it broadcast the notes of the Internationale, I think that's a song, back to Earth, marking a significant victory for the Soviet space program. Luna 10 conducted the extensive measurements of the moon's magnetic field, radiation environment, and gravity, providing essential data for future lunar missions. Its success proved that orbiting the moon was possible and paved the way for more complex lunar exploration like Artemis II. Okay, first Mercury flyby, March 29th, 1974. NASA's Mariner 10 made history on March 29th, 1974 by becoming the first spacecraft to fly past the planet Mercury. Using a gravity assist from Venus, the spacecraft was able to reach the innermost planet and capture the first close-up images of its cratered surface. The mission revealed that Mercury has a moon-like appearance but possesses a weak global magnetic field, a surprising discovery at the time. Mariner 10 performed 2 subsequent flybys of Mercury in 1974 and 1975 before its fuel was exhausted. It remained the only spacecraft to visit Mercury until American Messenger mission arrived in 2004. So that's about 30 years. Okay, and on April 1st, 1960, NASA launched TIROS-1, which stands for Television Infrared Observation Satellite, TIROS, the first successful weather satellite. Although its mission lasted only 78 days, it revolutionized the field of meteorology by proving that satellites could monitor Earth's weather patterns from space. The spacecraft sent back nearly 23,000 images of cloud cover, allowing scientists to track storms and large-scale weather systems for the first time. This success led to the development of more advanced weather satellites that are now essential for modern weather forecasting. TIROS-1 laid the foundation for the global network of environmental satellites we rely on today for disaster warning and climate research. Okay, and another uncrewed mission, NASA launched on April 4th, 1968, NASA launched the Apollo 6 mission as the second and final uncrewed test flight of the massive Saturn V rocket. primary objective was to demonstrate the rocket's ability to launch the Apollo spacecraft toward the moon and test the heat shield's performance during high-speed re-entry. Sounds familiar. Despite experiencing several engine failures during the ascent, the mission provided invaluable data on the Saturn V's structural integrity and performance under stress. The command module successfully returned to Earth, proving that the heat shield could withstand the intense heat of returning from lunar distances. The lessons learned from Apollo 6 were critical in ensuring the safety of the crewed Apollo 7 and 8 missions that followed. Okay, and the last item for this week's history, March 28th, 1999. First commercial satellite launch from a floating platform took place when the Sea Launch project successfully deployed a demonstration payload utilizing a modified oil drilling platform in the Pacific Ocean. The rocket proved that launch operations could be conducted efficiently from the equator. This unique approach allowed for greater payload capacity by taking advantage of the Earth's rotational speed at the equator there. The mission marked the beginning of a new era and commercial spaceflight, offering more flexibility and access to geostationary orbits. Sea Launch went on to perform dozens of missions for international telecommunications companies before its eventual restructuring. And that's it. So we will restructure this and go to Chaz with Miss Carolyn's Constellation of the Week. But first, back to you, Bill, W5GUS.
Thank you very much, Gus. This is N5BB, and this is Skynet. Do we have any additional check-ins? This is N5BB. Don't see anybody new on Echolink or the web forum. So let's go to Miss Carolyn's Constellation of the Week. Chaz, you got any jokes this week? KF5JHA, this is N5BB.
Thanks, Bill. This is KF5JHA. Yes, I try to have jokes every week. Back at the first part of Gus' report, he talked about the full moon that happened on April the 1st. It's called a pink moon. You know, each full moon has a separate name during different times of the year. Harvest moon in the fall, a snow moon during the winter, and the pink moon this time of the year. Why is it a pink moon? Does it look pink? It's actually named after the pink wildflowers that grow alongside the road. So the pink moon just happened. Go look for those pink wildflowers alongside the road. So, Slide Master, slide number 14. Miss Carolyn's Constellation of the Week is named in honor of Silent T, Carolyn, KC5OZT. Carolyn contributed to Skynet each week, almost from its beginning in 2012 until May of 2019, with a detailed look at one particular constellation each week. Yep, we've been doing Skynet since 2012. Since there are about 52 easily visible constellations seen in Texas throughout the year out of the 88 total number of constellations, so Miss Carolyn covered the entire sky over the North Texas area in just a year. In her honor, we've continued that tradition of a constellation per week and named this segment after her. Miss Carolyn's Constellation this week is actually a twofer: Leo the Lion and Leo Minor, the small lion. Leo is one of the zodiac constellations and is the 12th largest constellation in size, occupying an area of 947 square degrees. Leo is one of the oldest constellations in the sky. Archaeological evidence suggests that the Mesopotamians had a constellation similar to Leo in the early 4000 BC period. The Persians knew the constellation as Seir, or Sir, Babylonians called it the Great Lion. The Greeks associated Leo with a Nemean lion and the beast that killed Hercules during the first of his 12 labors. The lion was placed among the constellations because it was the king of the beasts in the sky. The 6 brightest stars in constellation form was called the sickle of Leo, representing the lion's head and mane. Slide master, slide number 15, the jokes of the week. Now, if you're new to Skynet, the jokes are usually related to the constellation of the week. And if you have an Echolink connection, you can sit there and chat and tell me what you think of the jokes. If you're over on YouTube, you can do the same thing. I'm not monitoring YouTube tonight. But if you're just on radio, well, you can laugh or boo or hiss. Don't throw your radio out the window. Anyway, here we go. What kind of animals do we, what kind of animals and how many do you need to make a square? So what kind of animals and how many do you need to make a square? Well, that would be 4 lions. Is it? 4 lions? What do you call a lion with chickenpox? A dotted lion. What do you call a lion wearing a stylish hat? A dandelion. What's a lion? What do you call a lion running a copy machine? That would be a copycat. How do we know lions are religious? Well, because they pray frequently, and they pray as a family. Get it? It's the prey that they eat? Okay, never mind. And the final one, here we go. What street do lions live on? Main Street. And this is KF5JHA, and this is Skynet. Slide master, slide number 16. To find Leo in the sky, let's start with something familiar, Orion the Hunter. Find Orion in the southwestern sky tonight. The 2 shoulder stars are called Bellatrix and Betelgeuse. Draw a line from the right to the left, from Bellatrix to Betelgeuse, and keep on going. You should run into the brightest star in Canis Minor, Procyon. Keep on drawing the line past Procyon, so you run into the brightest star in Leo called Regulus. Slide master, slide number 17. Regulus, Alpha Leonis, means the little king. Robert Burnham notes in his Burnham's Celestial Handbook that Regulus has been almost universally associated in ancient cultures with royalty and a kingly power. Regulus is a multiple star system. Regulus B and C are easily observed with just about any instrument as a single star, but it appears as a single star can be split with larger instruments with good seeing. Regulus itself is a B-type or blue-white star. Regulus lies only half a degree from the ecliptic, so it is fairly common for the moon to pass very near it, and from time to time the moon will occult, in other words, block Regulus. Show of hands. Out there, does anyone know that's out there live on July the 7th, 1959? If so, how old were you? On that date, the planet Venus occulted Regulus, which is an extremely rare event. Does anyone here observe it? I wonder. Algebra, or Gamma Leonis, is derived from the Arabic phrase which means the lion's mane. This is an interesting double star with the primary having an orange or red color, and the companion is a yellowish, bluish, greenish. Makes it for a nice color contrast, at least for some. Just 2 degrees to the northwest of Gamma Leonis is the radiant and famous Leonid meteor shower, which peaks on November the 17th each year, originating from the comet 55P Tempel-Tuttle. Slide master, slide number 18, please. The Leo triplet, or Leo trio, M65, M66, and NGC 3628. These 3 galaxies are so close together, it's easy to fit all 3 of them in the same low-power field of view in a telescope. They can be observed in a 3-inch telescope. They look like small little faint buzzballs. slightly differing shapes. An 8-inch telescope can easily show all three galaxies. Photographs show a warp and NGC 3628 dust lane and the asymmetric spiral structure of M66, which contributes to their listing in the ARP Atlas of Peculiar Galaxies. Slide Master, slide number 19. Messier object number 105 is an elliptical galaxy. Dave Hutchison writes in the Spectrum newsletter, in a 8-inch telescope, it essentially looks like a big fuzz cotton ball. In his book, The Messier Object, Stephen James Amira writes that M105 is perhaps the purest object of the Messier catalog, and with its slightly oval disk shows at least some amount of imperfection. M105 is two nearby but somewhat fainter companions, NGC 3384 and NGC 3389, which can easily fit in the same field of view. It's also two slightly more distant companions are also in the field of view, M95 and M96. Wow. Let's talk about M96 and 95 in the next slide. Slide Master, slide number 20. M95 and M96, Dave Hutchinson writes that these two objects are two beautiful spiral galaxies that can be seen in the same field of view using an 8-inch Cassegrain telescope. With a wide-angle view and about 20 power, you may be able to see M105, M195, and M96 in the same field of view. M95 is a barred spiral galaxy, and at high power, its central bar can be visible. M96 is classified as a normal spiral galaxy. Some structure is visible with higher magnification. And this is KF5JHA, and this is Skynet. Slide Master, slide number 21. Leo Minor is a small, faint constellation on the northern sky with only one star brighter than fourth magnitude. The constellation name means the smaller lion in Latin. Leo Minor was created in 1687 from 18 stars between the larger constellation of Leo and Ursa Major and has no myths associated with it. Leo Minor is the 64th constellation in size, occupying only an area of 232 square degrees. Slide Master, slide number 22. Beta Leonis Minoris is the only star in Leo Minor that is a Greek letter for its name. The second brightest star of the constellation, Beta Leo Minoris, is a binary star with components of stellar designations G83 and F84, which means that they are yellow giant and a yellow-white subgiant. The bright star is 36 times more luminous than the Sun and is about twice the mass. It has a 7.8 times the Sun's radius. The radius is 5.8 times more luminous than that of the Sun and 1.35 solar masses. It has twice the solar radius. The stars have an apparent magnitude of 4.4 and 6.12 and are approximately 146 light years in distance from the Sun. Slide Master, slide number 23, a very interesting object. A very interesting object is Haney's Bullwhip. It's a quasar ionized echo, a rare type of astronomical object that was considered to be an unidentified astronomical object at the time of its discovery. It was first spotted by Haney, van Arkel, a Dutch schoolteacher, in 2007. She discovered the object while taking part in the Galaxy Zoo project as an amateur volunteer. The object's name, Haney's Bullwhip, means that Haney's object is in Dutch. The astronomer found that this is the only visible part of a 300 light-year long gaseous streamer stretching from around galaxy IC 2497. The greenish bullwhip is visible because of a searchlight beam of light from the galaxy's core illuminates it. This beam comes from a quasar, a bright, energetic object that is powered by a black hole. We've talked about quasars before on the Skynet before. And this is KF5, JJ, and this is Skynet. Slide Master, slide number 24. There are a few more astronomical link observing program objects from the constellation of Leo the Lion and Leo Minor the Lion, the Small Lion. I've just given you some, well, samplings of some of those objects. The Astronomical League has, at last count, 96 different observing programs, most of which have about 100 objects. Now, if you observe just 10 different objects in an observing program each month, then you can earn a certificate and a pen from the Astronomical League in about a year. Slide Master, slide number 25, and that is Miss Carolyn's Constellation of the Week, Leo the Lion and Leo Minor the Small Lion. I want to thank my friends Dave Hutchinson and Dennis Harwell for the research and words on deep sky objects that I borrow and steal from them every Skynet. I also at times use the website constellation-guide.com for information. Now next week we'll take a look at Pyrex, the compass, and Antilla, the pump. Yep, those are constellations in the sky. And this is KF5JJ Chaz saying good night in 73. Back to our net control in 5BB.
Thank you very much, Chaz. This is N5BB, net control for Skynet. We're near the end of the net. Do we have any last check-ins to the net? I didn't hear any audio that I could understand. If you increase your audio, we might hear you. Try again.
Alpha India 5, Sierra Radio.
Heard something that sounded like 95 TDS BDR radio. You're going to have to say it in a better way. Can you come and say your call sign phonetically? Well, I guess he wasn't trying to check in the net. One more try. Any last check-ins for the net? This is N5BD and this is Skynet.
Is this Sue?
November Victor 5 Foxtrot, Virginia in Fort Worth.
Bill, Carmen.
Okay, I got Virginia NV5S. Bill, N5BLT, was that you?
Yes, that was me. Sorry about that. Didn't mean to double.
Okay, and I don't think I have your call right. Is it W5BLT?
Yeah, 1T5. They didn't let us meet him. You got it correct, Bill Garland.
Okay, I got NV5S and W5BLT. Do we have any other check-ins to Skynet before I close the net? Bob, we're going to have to skip the launches. We're just out of time. Invisible satellite passages. So, is there anything else anybody has for the net before I close the net? Any last questions or comments?
Thanks.
Tonight we had something like 20 stations. It's kind of hard to get these multiple things added up, but it's something like that. I want to thank everybody for participating this evening in Skynet. We hope you'll join us here next week and every Saturday night at 9 p.m. to discuss astronomy, space, and space exploration. On this net, the sky is never the limit. We're always looking for net control stations for this net, and all other Dallas Image Radio Club nets. If you have any interest, send email to nets.
I'm completely operational, and all my circuits are functioning
You
perfectly.
can file topics and discussions about this by going to W5FC.org, and you'll find all kinds of archives and things. Until next Saturday evening, this is N5BB, closing its net at 10:30 p.m. local time. Returning the repeater to normal amateur radio use. Sending greetings, everybody. Enjoy the evening discovering the universe. Tom, K5ICX, this is N5BB. I'll turn it over to you for Afterglow.
Thank you, Bill, and thanks for a great net this evening. We'll be starting the Afterglow movie net here in about 5 minutes, so go make yourself some microwave popcorn. Set it to 4 minutes, no more. That'll give you a minute to come back, and we'll be discussing tonight's movie, Snowpiercer from 2013. This is KE5ICX.
Does somebody have Echolink or some other network linked somewhere else? It sounds like somebody's coming through that doesn't realize they're talking out of repeater. This is N5BB.
All right, it's been 5 minutes, and it is now time for the Afterglow Movie Net. I am KE5ICX Tom down in Corpus. Tonight's movie, selected by popular demand, well, I picked it. It's called Snowpiercer from 2013. It's a post-apocalyptic action thriller film based on a French climate fiction graphic novel. I won't even pretend to be able to pronounce this. It was filmed by Bong Joon-ho and written by Bong and Kelly Masterson. An international co-production, the film marks Bong's English language debut. Almost 85% of the film's dialogue is in English. Stars a bunch of different people. Perhaps you would know this. Octavia Spencer, Jamie Bell probably are the most known of contemporary actors, along with classic John Hurt and Ed Harris were in it. Takes place aboard Snowpiercer train as it travels a globe-encircling track carrying the last remnants of humanity after a failed attempt at climate engineering to stop global warming, and it has created a new snowball Earth. Evans stars as Curtis Everett, a leader of the lower-class tail section passengers as they rebel against the elite in the front of the train. Filming took place at Barrandov Studios in Prague using train car sets mounted on gimbals to simulate the train's motion, well, most of the time. Snowpiercer received critical acclaim and appeared in many film critics' top 10 lists of 2014 after its international release, with praise for its vision, direction, performances, particularly of Evans and Swinton. In the United States, the film was initially planned for a limited screen showing, but critical response prompted Weinstein Company to expand the showing to theaters and to digital streaming services. With a budget of $40 million, it remains one of the most expensive South Korean productions ever. Fourth volume of the original Snowpiercer graphic novel series, Snowpiercer Terminus, published in 2019, serves as a sequel to the film, establishing it as being set in the same continuity as the original graphic novels. The film has also been the basis of a television series set in a different continuity that aired from 2020 to 2024. It's completed its four-season run in 2024. This has a rather long description of the plot, so I'm going to skip that. Just think about people being stuck on a train forever. If you've been one of those people or been to an airport and been stuck in an airplane forever, it's pretty much the same feeling with people going crazy and wanting to pretty much get at each other's throats. Okay, with that, this is how the game is played. If you're listening for the first time, then simply what we do is we go through and check in, then we talk about the film's plot, followed by characterization, followed by special effects, or anything we missed on the first two rounds. So go ahead and take check-ins now. If you would like to join us this evening, you don't have to have necessarily seen the film, all that would be a help. Being a part of this net is always welcome, so you don't have to have seen the film to participate. So here we go. Please come with your call sign, your name, and did you see tonight's film, Snowpiercer from 2013?
Go November Tango 5, Tango Mike. Tony in East Dallas. Yes, I saw the movie.
November Victor 5, Foxtrot, Virginia in Fort Worth. I saw the movie.
Kilo Bravo 9, Sierra Oscar Kilo, Sean Fort Worth. I seen the movie.
Okay, let me go ahead and acknowledge those three. We've got NT5TM Tony East Dallas. Yes, she saw the movie. NB5S Virginia Fort Worth. Yes, she saw the movie. TV9SOK Sean also Fort Worth. Yes, he saw the movie. Additional check-ins come now. Well, this may be a short nap this evening. That's okay with me. I'm getting a little tired, but we may have some additional check-ins here in a little bit. So we'll do another round here at the end of these three check-ins. So we'll start with Tony and T5TM. Tony, what you think about the plot for tonight's movie Snowpiercer from 2013?
I found it a very odd combination of engaging and stupid. On the upside, I could not look away. I kept watching. I finished the movie. The poor were struggling against the overmasters in their perfect clothes, with their less disgusting food, their whistles, their neat conductors' uniforms, their megaphones, so on and so forth. So it was very engaging. The action was always tense. It was always interesting. There was always something I didn't know. The plot kept me paying attention. Except a lot of the attention was negative. The train turned out to be impossibly long. They thought they were accomplishing a heroic feat by getting like 6 cars forward. And instead, they were like, oh, this train, like we saw a big loop where a sniper was shooting from one car to the other to the train that was half a mile away. The train was very big. It had gritty parts. It had nightclubs. It had a sauna that looked like we were going to fight Darth Maul. That part of the plot was very repetitive, like, you know, hey, the princess is in another castle. We have to get forward in their car. And another car, and then we have to do this again. Who's the big boss in this car? What's the mystery here? We have to go up another level. Got kind of tiresome. And then there was an episode of South Park where we met a character called Chief Runs with Premise, and I think it was his grandson, Premise running thin. The premise on this train did kind of run thin. There were way too many people. Where did all those people with the axes sleep? There was not enough space devoted to food production. There was not enough source of nitrogen or carbon input. Track work just falls apart, like roads and highways. They could have at least showed us a robot, like changing up the sleepers, the railroad ties under the track. But no, somehow, I guess because the Earth was very cold, nothing happened. Whoever wrote this didn't think enough about glaciers and the, half mountains getting scraped off and moved hundreds of miles downstream. Glaciers are extremely powerful. Even if there was no weather, ice is very destructive. Also, if there's no weather, you can't have an avalanche. Avalanches form from loosely packed snow that slides over the harder snow underneath. You can't have an avalanche if there's no water cycle. You can't have a water cycle if the entire world is frozen. Okay, Aaron complains I'm nitpicking too much. The plot was just really implausible. Things fall apart. The center does not hold. It got repetitive. I love the intensity of the action, but the world did not work for me. NT5TM.
Oh my. I wouldn't want to go to the movie and see this movie with you, Tony. Boy, you really gave it a black eye. Well, it's all true, everything you said, but even still, it's just a movie. You know how that song goes. Okay, next up is Virginia, NB5F. Virginia, I'm sure you found this much better and very entertaining and a lot of fun, especially the musical number in the middle. What did you think from KE5 ICS?
Yeah, so the basics of the plot were pretty standard, you know, class stuff. It almost felt like, you know, Nazi concentration camp, you know, fascist elites versus the dirty rabble, you know, the masses who, you know, they eat monolith bars made out of bugs and fish guts, and you know, you think that's the only world, and I mean, the way they did it was you kind of don't know even where you are when you start, you know, you're just on this, you're in this tin can of some kind, and so you're kind of finding out with the characters that are there in that crowded, yucky place, that they do present very well as absolutely dreadful. You're kind of finding out along with them where you are and what's going on, which made it kind of interesting at first, because there is that moment where they finally break through and they get past the guys with the axes, which I don't know, was their job to gut fish, because they always had these fish. It just seemed a real extreme way to gut fish. You know, I don't know why you have that many guys with axes on a train. You know, but they got to that part of the train that had windows, you know, and they realized that, I guess they all knew they were on a train, but I wasn't sure what was going on at the beginning. Sometimes at the beginning we're all blathering on the message thread and I'm not paying complete attention to the setup. I did know there was some correction attempt to climate stuff, and it turned the world way colder than it was supposed to be, and you know, and you kind of figure out quickly that they're on some kind of a moving vehicle or something, and then you figure out it's a train, and then you're like figure out that the further forward you go, the nicer and fancier it gets, and that the guy who runs the train is the guy who invented it, and he's a deity to them, even though it's only been 18 years. I don't think that's long enough for people to like generationally like lock into something like that. That usually takes a few generations for history to be completely lost, and you know, the people who are on the train now, except for the kids, are people who remember being put there. And you know, there's like the evil guard guys who, you know, take away children, and people who play the violin, and you know, it's very concentration camp like at first. You know, and there's kind of a revolt, and there's apparently been other revolts, and they use those failed revolts as an example. And there's like this head lady who you almost think of her as like the warden of the camp, and she's really freaky. And I guess she's like one of the muckety-muck high in command and knows the train inventor guy who's like the ruler of the world, if you assume that all the people in this train are the only people left on Earth, and the train has to keep moving to, like, the friction and heat from the engine running, like, processes water so they can have a water supply on the train because it breaks ice, and that ice somehow gets taken into some kind of intake system, and that provides them with water, and, you know, and I wondered where all those people lived, like, the people in the tail end of the train, they all lived in, you know, concentration camp-like stacks of bunks and tunnels of junk. And then the further forward you went, the cars all seemed to be really, like, not very, you know, there was no, like, living quarters. It was all, like, there was a car that was an aquarium, and there was a car that was a greenhouse, and, you know, that's where they're getting all the fish. And I guess they're taking all the leftovers from the fish and all the bugs from the garden that pollinate the food and turning them into flat monolith bars. And meanwhile, all the food and fresh fish and all that is like, you know, that's being served to the better people up front. And the further forward you go, kind of a weirder and more specific each car. You know, there's a car that's a beauty salon, and there's a car that looks like wading pools, and that was the car they were in when they were having the gunfight that was on the big curve that the train was on. And I don't know, it's not clear, and it seems the further, the narrower the train gets. So I don't know if it's like bullet-shaped or for aerodynamics, or if it's just that the sets got more expensive and therefore narrower as they went. Because when you're on it at the beginning, it's like, it feels like you're on like a big moving city of some kind. And then the further forward you get, the smaller and more train-like it seems. So my guess was last night when Tony and I were chatting about it, my guess was that it's some kind of a double-decker train, and all the recreational or schools or whatever are up at the top, and then people maybe all sleep in luxury bunks down below. I don't know. I don't know how that would work, because there were a lot of people on that train. But I guess in the grand scheme of things, there were probably only like maybe a couple thousand people on the train. I'm not sure how many there were, but maybe they said. But the whole trope of like you finally get to the bad guy and you're right at the gate, and then you stop and have a long, drawn-out conversation about, you know, the guy that they said betrayed you, that was the old man that they ended up killing, and apparently he was working with the head guy of the train to turn the main character into the next, you know, like basically turn him into what he hated the most, and that was hard on that guy to find that out from the main guy who was sending him messages the whole time to try to lead him up there and basically defeat him by making him, you know, basically like causing him to sell out. And, you know, Ed Harris, I like Ed Harris better as a good guy, but anyway, that's part two. But yeah, it's pretty typical stuff, because then you get there and you've got a gun or you've got a bomb or you've got whatever you're going to do to like defeat the bad guy, and then he starts just being all like narcissistic and gaslighty, and you find yourself sitting there staring at him while he eats steak, and you know, you figure out that all the kids they took are somehow like underneath the floorboards, like manually running the engine. How are the kids making an engine go like, it's got to be going like 200 miles an hour like all the time, and they go in circles because they go by the same tracks at the same time every year, and they call that the New Year when they go by the same place. I don't know if it's actually a year later, but they have this big stupid New Year thing where they all eat eggs. It's just, and then the color stuff, I don't know, I'll talk about that in round 3, but anyway, it, like Tony said, it was, you cared enough about the people in the, you know, the bad part that were trying to revolt against the evil people that were running the show, and that battle axe lady, I didn't mind seeing her get hers. Boy, she deserved it. She was horrible. But then they get to the end, and they're about to open the main door to the big engine room, and then they just sit there and start talking, and you find out that the main character, like, you know, that the reason people are missing arms and legs, apart from some other obvious reasons that they do to punish or torture people, that they're missing arms and legs because that was the only thing they had for food. They were like eating each other's limbs or something. you know, and then it's like a sad cannibal story. I don't know, it was just, but it was like a literal train wreck that you couldn't look away from, and it actually ended with a train wreck, and somehow it seemed that the only two people who survived were two little kids, or a kind of a teenager and a little kid who was at the beginning, and his mom died in the Star Wars sauna room, and the guy who got killed, supposedly got killed there, didn't get killed, and he came back, and it was just, there was a lot of tropey stuff. There were some twists. It was hard to ignore, you know. It was interesting. I wanted the good guys to win, so, and it was the same nihilistic dystopian, like, yeah, they win, but nobody wins because everybody's dead, and the train's all wrecked, and their two kids are out in the snow, and then they see a polar bear, which I guess is supposed to be a sign of life, and it's supposed to be like a hopeful sign, but polar bears are like the largest land predator in the world, so I assume those two kids got eaten about 5 minutes after seeing that polar bear, and so I assume that's how the movie ends. Or else, my theory that I put to Tony is that this is all just taking place in a giant snow globe where, with a Christmas tree in the middle, and the train is just going round and round in a giant snow globe for all eternity until somebody gets mad and wrecks it. So, anyway, I don't know. It was interesting enough to keep watching, but it was dreary enough to not feel inspired to ever watch this again. Back to Ned in V5F.
Thank you, Virginia. I knew you'd love it. Let's see. Next up is Sean, KB9SOK. Sean, your thought on the plot for tonight's movie Snowpiercer from 2013.
Yeah, this is KB9SOK. Yeah, I feel very similar to Tony and Virginia on this one. I have very mixed feelings about this film. Yeah, it is. It just, you know, as Virginia said, it's a train wreck that you couldn't turn away from. You wanted to see what happened next. There was just enough twists and turns to keep you interested, even though it was just kind of a, you know, just one battle after the other. There actually was one car that went by up front that did have, like, chambers for people to live in. But it was very briefly seen, so that's probably understandable to miss that. Yeah, they never really, I assume a lot of this, you know, obviously as long as that train was, we didn't see all the cars. But yeah, the whole thing is kind of ridiculous. Definitely fantasy, way more than, you know, any kind of real science behind it, because none of it was at all feasible. You know, first of all, if ice was that solid, that train wouldn't go through it. And then, yeah, the infinite train that had infinite power that could never, you know, shut down. Yeah, there's just so many things they didn't explain. The only thing they really kind of explained, as you mentioned earlier, I think it was Virginia, about the water intake. That was about the only part they really tried to break down for you on the science side of this thing. But there were just so many weird things, like even in between from car to car, they opened the doors and it's like it was one solid straight piece. You know, you didn't see the bendy part. So it'd go around corners and stuff. You know, you thought there had been some kind of little flux tunnel or something. I don't know. Yeah, I agree. I think Tony said somebody didn't really think this thing through. But yeah, it's just one of those things you want to kind of keep watching it. You know, I got to appraise it for trying to do something different. Because one of the things I thought of today, as I thought back about what I wanted to say tonight, was, you know, something I've kind of noticed over the last year as, we watched some of these sci-fi movies, and as I've watched some old classics, I mentioned a while back I was watching Babylon 5 again, and I'm through like season 4 now, and I guess because we've all watched so much science fiction now, nothing's really new anymore. You can totally predict, even on episodes you've never seen. They all copy each other so much. You know, we got so many movies that are just copies with tiny, tiny differences. So it becomes kind of boring for us that love these kind of movies, because we just get so used to the themes and the tropes, and we already know what's going to happen.
So it is nice on occasion to find a movie that tries to do something different. I think that was their intent here, but it just kind of failed in many places. So it's you know, I wanted to be impressed with this movie because, like you mentioned, Tom, I'd heard really good things about this film, and so I was kind of excited about it because I thought, wow, this is going to be, you know, this might be one of the best we've watched in a while, and I'm just kind of left partly disappointed with this one. You know, there were small parts I liked. We did kind of care about the people, which I guess we'll talk more about next round, but the overall just kind of, I guess how the plot's put together didn't make sense. At the end of the day, this movie basically boiled down to an eccentric rich guy that built this train that wanted to prove a point that all human beings, when it comes right down to it, will resort back to basic instincts and become animals. You know, that was the whole speech he gave our hero, and that's really kind of what this movie boiled down to. So, yeah, I don't know about this one. I don't know that I'd watch it again, or it would be an interesting, I don't know how much I would recommend it either, even though the critics and public seem to really like it. Anyway, that's all I got for this round. Back to net, KB9S, okay.
List. I'll go ahead and ask if anyone else would like to check in now. If you'd like to join us, tonight's movie, Snowpiercer from 2013. Please come with your call sign name. Did you see tonight's movie?
This is Whiskey 5, Bacon, Lettuce, Tomato, Bill and Garland. I did not hop aboard this train.
Okay, we picked up one more. One of our regulars, W5BLT, Bill, over in Garland. He did not see this movie. Bill, have you ever taken Amtrak before?
Actually, the only train that I've ever ridden on was a train at Kings Island, amusement park in Ohio. Well, I take that back. I did ride the train in Austin. Not the Amtrak, but it was a commuter train. I will say that I read reviews on this, and I watched some YouTube reviews, and I just gonged it before I even started watching it. I just thought, you know, it's an interesting concept, but it seemed just far-fetched about the train. And I just thought, you know, I don't know, you gotta be in a... I just didn't want to be watching a depressing movie. I looked at the ending and the spoiler alerts, and I thought, I think I'm just going to skip this one. I'm just gonging it right at the start. But it is an interesting concept, the social commentary and things like that, so I will give it that. But the train tunneling through ice, I agree with Don. It's far-fetched. The kids being able to make the train go by whatever they were doing to get that train to go. I don't know. And I don't like cannibalistic movies, so anyway, it struck out for me. I gonged it at the beginning. That's all I got. W5BLT.
Okay, thank you, Bill, and don't apologize. If you decide you don't want to watch a movie that could potentially cause brain damage, you're probably better off than the rest of us that decided to actively engage the brain damage moment. So don't worry about it. You'll have plenty of opportunities to abuse your intellectual higher learning functionality on probably the next movie, which I can hardly wait to unleash on all of you here soonish. Okay, my comments about the film. I thought Tony's comment is probably the best. His very first words, engaging and stupid, probably pretty much describes this film. It's engaging in that we all kind of sat there wondering how this thing was going to end. They go on a little journey from the back of the train to the front of the train, very much like Amtrak. What are you going to find along the way? Well, lots of crazy characters. You're going to find a dining car that probably doesn't have any food. And you're going to have some sort of mishap along the way. All Amtrak trademark, gold standard type stuff you would expect. And that's exactly what we got. But we also added axes and machine guns and night vision and a crazy lady who was running the thing. I liked her. She was fun. But we'll talk about her later on. Let's see. Yes, the story was very... the dystopian society, and then reflection about the corporate world and all of that. And we've seen all this before. It is a graphic novel, so the characters are going to be graphic, if I may use that phrase. They're going to be a little on the crazy side. They're going to be bigger than life, which is what happens when we watch these things. V for Vendetta was like that. There's other films, I think, what's one of them? Fallout's an example of that, the television series. The Last of Us is another example. These are all graphic novels that have been converted successfully into motion pictures or television series, and they do have that cartoonish quality to them. So, yeah, it's to be expected, I think, with these type of films. Now, something that's interesting about it is it character driven, and that may be what saved this movie were the performances overall. We had the goofy characters and all of that. We'll get into them specifically in the next round, but I think that's what helped carry the film. That's very important. If the characters aren't interesting or engaging, you're not going to stick with it because the concept is somewhat limited. So how do you make a 3 years or 4 years for a television series and make it work? I don't know. I'm very curious to find out how they did that and did it work. Let's see. I took some notes here. Some interesting things. Just some sidelights about the train. And how big is this thing? I mean, how long is it? How big is it? How wide is it? We had some questions about that because the plausibility of this whole thing and keeping a society running on a train perpetually just doesn't make any sense. That's the stupid part, I guess. And it just didn't make a lot of sense. It wouldn't hold together anyway. It's still interesting, but it reminded me of a couple of things that I've seen in the past. One was Super Train. If you're old enough, you may remember that series from, I think it was 1977. I think it was 1977 that it came out, and it's a big train that runs on a double wide track, and it was meant to compete with or be complementary to the Love Boat, the same basic concept only on a train, and it had the same stupid stuff, all swimming pools and fancy saunas and all those things, only it had a happy thing. They didn't have machetes and machine guns. They had cute stories and wonderful people that were guest stars. Last very long. I don't even think it made it through its 13th episode run. Another thing is that I loved, that was hilarious, was Southern Airlines, or Southern Airways, which was merged into North Central, became Republic, and then part of Northwest. That was during the big merger mania. But Southern Airlines had one class service where it was all coach, or they called it business class, but it really wasn't. It was coach. But the thing about it was it's exactly like the same premise. The passenger gets on board. He's in the front of the airplane. There's people that are drinking champagne. The flight attendants are in gowns and diamonds, and everybody's laughing and having a wonderful time. And as the passenger gets on board, he hands the ticket to the flight attendant. She's smiling. She looks at it. She says, "In the back." And she stuffs the ticket back in his face. And he goes in the back, and the aircraft is just ribbed, and somebody's making soap, and there's a guy with a violin playing the violin, and there's no seats. You got to sit on the floor, and all that. And that was it's immediately what I thought of when I started watching Snowpiercer was that ad. If you get a chance, go to YouTube and watch it. It's pretty hilarious. I always enjoyed it when it was on TV. Oh, another thing, and this may get into the technical part of it, I'm not sure, but I think Tony or someone mentioned the fact that it was maybe a double-decker train. I think you're right, and indeed some of the exterior shots suggested that, although not the entire train. Parts of it had that double-decker Skyliner type approach to it. So maybe the living quarters were below. I don't know. There's something else I was going to mention about that. Oh, the aquariums and that. Where do you put aquariums on a freaking train? That didn't make any sense. Oh, one thing I was going to mention, I did look at the graphic novel part on the internet just to get a kind of a feel for what the graphic novel looked like. And it has a more realistic train on it. It looks more like a conventional train and not this special effects driven thing that you see. So it looked a little more plausible for something that isn't very plausible to begin with. But I thought that was rather interesting. And I think in a way that probably would have been better than what we ended up with. I think a more traditional train approach, maybe very long, with a very special engine might have something to do with it. I don't know. Might have helped it. But as it is, it was kind of this wonder thing, and it could do anything, and they could go anywhere. I imagine the TV series is pretty much like that, maybe taking it to another level. I don't know. But it's a bit odd, and it took me out of the moment. I never once felt that this was real to me. What made it real and helped it and saved it in my eyes, although it's probably not something I'm going to go back and watch, was the characters and the character-driven part of it. The characters are interesting, and that's what kept my interest. Okay, with that, we'll go ahead and go back up to the top of the list. We'll talk about exactly that, characterization. So, Tony, NT5TM, you are up.
I need to help Aaron with something here. Could you call on me again at the end? NT5TM.
Fair enough. I'll roll you to the end. You're on the tail of the train now. Okay. Virginia runs the radio, NV5F. You get to talk about characterization. What did you think about... I know you like the crazy lady with the shoe on her head. That was your favorite character, wasn't it?
Yes, I loved her so much, especially when she got a bullet to the head. Well, I think the characters here were distinctive enough. You could tell them apart. You could tell who the main character was, and it took a little while to kind of get that all figured out. But the characters stood out from one another enough, and you know, there was the acting I thought was pretty good. The maniacal woman who ran the show there, she was convincing in that I hated her guts. So she did a good job being that, horrific of a person. Ed Harris, he did good because I didn't like him. And I love Ed Harris. I find him very likable. I like the stuff he does in general. And he did a good job being the very bad guy. I mean, acting in this was good. It had some good actors in it that I've seen in other things. I think for what it was, as far as, you know, the players and the characters, that was all right. I liked these people. I wanted them to succeed. I did not like the bad guys. I did not want them to succeed. The evil woman and the heavy who ended up coming back from the dead somehow, which, you know, that always happens to make one more reversal. And the lady, Timmy's mom, I think she was in Hidden Figures a few years later, which is a great movie. She's really good, and it sucked that she died. And yeah, everybody in this did a good job at their roles. I believed them in that they were sincere enough in what their goal was that, you know, that made me believe the world enough to stick with this, even though the whole main premise was a little bit thin as far as, I mean, at first it's kind of interesting, and then the further you get toward the front of the train, the more implausible the whole thing seems. You know, it's like you're going from Mad Max concentration camp world, immediately you're in, like, you know, weird suburban white upper middle class, like Edward Scissorhands world or something. You know, it's just, but, you know, the people were, you know, even the pregnant school teacher and all of her propaganda, and the little man who was the violinist, and the, you know, all the innocent little kids who had been taught to worship the Wilfred or whatever his name was, the Ed Harris guy who runs the train, and you know, they sold it. I was you know, disturbed by a lot of it, but I think my favorite characters are probably the guys with all the axes. Back to Ned in V5.
Yes, Axman. They're always the best. They're always appreciated in movies. Okay, and they always get to the point. Well, they have a point to get to. Yes. Okay. Next up is Sean, JB9SOK. Sean, what did you think about characterization and acting in our fine film, Snowpiercer, from 2013?
Yeah, this is KB9SOK. Kind of, as I was sitting here thinking, the whole thing was, if you could make a power source that would never stop, why would you even need a train? Couldn't you just built a small city and powered it and heated it with that engine? Anyway, more of the implausible plot. It's funny, as Tom, as you mentioned some of those other movies, it reminded me of a movie that I seen, probably 6 months ago. I stumbled into it on YouTube, and it was called The Big Bus. And it was the same way. It was supposed to be this crazy, impossibly long bus that was nuclear powered, and it had a swimming pool on the second floor. And yeah, it was. Of course, it was a comedy. At least they knew that it was a joke. But it really, I just now thought that it kind of reminded me of this movie as well. So yeah, the characters were kind of the saving grace of this to some extent. I agree with Virginia on that. You did care about the characters, and I also agree that it got more ridiculous as they moved forward, because the movie started out very, grounded, very, a little depressing, but it felt, like something it really could be, and you really felt for these people in the back. But too, it's kind of interesting, why did they even have that back section? Because, they say that those people weren't invited, they were let on at the last second. So did they build this prison area at the last second? I don't know. So once again, the book maybe explains all that, but not something I'm going to read. So guess I'll never know. But yeah, the characters, I thought it was very well acted, actually. Everybody was definitely, convincing, our hero had his big long journey of dealing with his guilt of killing his best friend's mother, and because he was going to basically eat him. So he definitely had the hero's journey. We had our crazy billionaire, running the train, and he was definitely very convincing. The crazy lady was very convincing. Yeah, you definitely wanted her to get her due, and she did. We had several bad guys on this that, you didn't want them to win, and they didn't. And, so yeah, it was a little depressing at the end, obviously, with everybody basically dying. But that seems to be a theme the last 10 to 15 years in a lot of movies. Everybody has to die now. And I don't know why they're on that kick, but they are. I kind of like a movie to end with some hope. This movie sort of did, claiming that there was polar bears that survived, and there could be maybe people someplace, but yeah. So yeah, no, the characters were definitely distinct. I was rooting for the back of the people in the back, and so there was that. So anyway, beyond that, I really don't have a whole lot more to say about it. Back to that KB9SOK.
All right, thank you, Sean. And yes, I forgot about the big bus. That actually came out. I think that and Super Train came out almost at the same time. They were all trying to come up with something to counter the Love Boat, which was really popular. And those two series, even the Love Boat, went on forever and ever, and even did some made-for-TV movies later on, and even a reunion series. This thing neither of those two made it in any way, shape, or form, I guess because it wasn't very believable. But at any rate, there you have it. Okay, let's see. Can I ask Bill? Bill, have you ever been, let's see. Have you ever been on an airplane or well, you haven't been on a train. You said that. You've been on an airplane with a kid kept banging on your seat. Have you been on an airplane with a kid banging on the seat? How's that? And what would you have done if you were, the hero? What would you have done with the child from KE5 ICX?
Well, Tom, I have been on a plane, but I was actually that child. So, yeah, I was banging on the seat and probably caused some general mischief. So fortunately I survived. Think about how thankful those polar bears were when the two kids got off the train. If you're a polar bear out, or maybe I guess there weren't two polar bears, right? There's just one polar bear. But, he's probably pretty hungry, and, big explosion kind of woke him up out of hibernation. And wow, cool, look at that. I want to just say, as a black guy one time, I went to a convention. It was an NFB convention, and they had, I think it was an NFB convention. Maybe I don't, actually, I can't remember the convention, so maybe it wasn't, but there was a big taxidermy room. And I got to go in and look at lions and tigers and bears, actually. And there were other things in there too, but I never really realized how big a lion was and a bear. And so it's interesting for me to get to look at that. And so as we're talking about this polar bear, I wouldn't want to be one of the only two kids running around and a big polar bear out there. I am curious about this TV series now, so I don't know if I'll get sucked into this or not. I'm trying not to, but now you guys have intrigued me by talking about it. So E5DLT, back to you, Tom.
All right, thank you, Bill. I'm going to tell a story because, and then give Tony a little extra time. Maybe he'll be back just before we end this round. So, yes, I actually like trains. I kind of, not as much as airplanes, I suppose, but I like trains and that. And I had a friend who was a train aficionado, and we actually took a trip from Detroit downtown to downtown Chicago, and it was Amtrak, and they had just they'd refurbished all the Skyliner cars that were meant for like the old Zephyr routes and things like that, in transcontinental routes. And so they were testing them out on the shorter Detroit to Chicago run. And he says, "God, we got to do this. And oh, by the way, we're going to a train convention." I said, "Oh, okay." And in fact, I'm looking over, and I've got just right near here my signal lamp I bought at that in 1977. I still have the signal lamp. It's sitting here ready to go up on display again after the move. And it's 120 years old, I guess, something like that. It's pretty old. Very impressive. At any rate, the thing was is that I remember how much the ticket was. It was $17.50 one way. That's it. That's all it was, which was hard for me to believe that it's true. And getting on the train and taking it all the way to Chicago and then taking a commuter out to where the train convention was interesting. But it was a lot of fun. And I remember as a kid, the Chessie line. I would go to Mexico, Missouri from Detroit with my grandmother and to go visit her sister. And it was a classic train. You get on the train, they had the conductor, the Pullman, all the things you remember from the movies that you see from the 40s and 50s. They were there helping passengers on board. We had a sleeper car when we go down, so we would sleep, and then the next morning the train would pull into Mexico, Missouri, which was outside of St. Louis somewhere. And that was really cool. I really, really thought that was cool. That was about 1965, 1966, that time frame. And the train went out of service in 66, and we started flying there on Boeing 720s, which is a shorter version of the 707. American Airlines, Thunderbolt. Okay, at any rate, that's my story. I'm sticking to it. Let me go to Tony, NT5TM. Hey, Tony, what do you have to say about the characterization on tonight's movie from KE5I6?
Well, Tom, I don't have train stories as good as yours, but yeah, you did have me wanting to say, good morning, America, how are you? Oh, hi, Ferdinand. So, yeah, the characters were, as everyone has agreed, the saving grace of this movie. They were so quirky and or creepy. Ed Harris, as, reprising his role from The Truman Show as the creepy, imperfect God. I had no idea that was Tilda Swinton as the minister. I had to look that up on Wikipedia, but she was absolutely Gilliam-esque. I mean, that character was right out of Brazil. Just completely nailed how the movie, the writer, the director, and the actress just completely nailed how creepy and strange her character was. Hi, Ferdinand. Now, that said, I do want to point out that the characters have the 21st century problem. No one is in love with anyone. Yes, one woman did love her son, and another man, I think, loved his child. I can't remember if it was a son or a daughter. But by and large, these are people who they're not writing poetry, they're not in love. Okay, there was the guy who made the paintings. We got a little bit of art and love there, but yeah, by and large, not enough love, not enough motivation. So great creepiness, I don't think enough realism. People do love one another. NT5TM.
Thank you, Tony. And, I think you mentioned it, characterization for the film. I think everybody was cast to type. First off, I guess we can go through the list here. Chris Evans as Curtis Everett. I thought he did a really great job. He was asked to play the role, and as the leader, and he did a really good job. But I like the way he played it. It was supposed to be this really hard character, and he starts out that way, but you find out there's a sensitive, introverted side, which I thought was very helpful for the film. And it really says something at the end when he gives his confession about being that guy from the story as the unsympathetic character that gets transformed afterwards. I thought that was pretty cool. The Namgung Minsu character, that's the guy who did the security features. He was fun to watch. He and the girl asked me some more of those drugs as we go from car to car. Which was interesting. Ed Harris plays character type. He's always done that from playing, John Glenn in his signature role back then, but he's gone on in The Right Stuff, and has gone on, and it's the same character as the man in the black hat in Westworld television series, that sort of thing, and of course anything else he's in. So he played the type, but very well. The Gilliam character played by John Hurt. John Hurt also played the character, cast the character. He's played that kind of role, so slightly crazy, but melancholy, introspective character. He did that in Kiss the Spider Woman and a few other roles. So that was to be expected, and he was requested because of something that the director had saw in him as a kid, watching him on screen in The Elephant Man, as it says here. Tilda Swinton, let's see, he was an okay character. I didn't mind him. He was a monster, crazy guy, pulling in all of the nasty characters, as it says here in the wiki. It made for a really memorable role. He wouldn't stop. Jamie Bell, second in command. See here, Impish. I can't really say much. I'm starting to lose it now. Octavia Spencer, typically good acting on her part. I really enjoyed that a lot. Andrew character, it's fine. I didn't think there was anything bad there, trying to hold his son together before getting his own demise. Now, who's our character, the crazy lady? You were talking about her, who was wonderful. She was really great. My favorite character in the whole thing, because she plays it kind of crazy. But very enjoyable and kooky. The thing about it is you kind of know people like that, and you wonder what would happen in an unrestrained society where these people might end up. And when you find that happening in films or even in real life in some cases, it's just completely crazy. It just always leads to no good. So overall, it was a great cast, a memorable cast, and I think that's what made the movie. Wasn't my most favorite movie, but I thought in the end, I thought it was pretty strong from performance standpoint. Story-wise, not so much. We've seen this story before. And I agree, there was a comment earlier, Sean, you mentioned it, and I thought it was very appropriate. By saying, why bother with a train and run people around the world? Why don't you just stop someplace, build a structure, and use whatever that eternal fuel is that keeps everybody alive, and the engine, the energy, whatever it is, and keep everybody warm and covered up. But then I guess we wouldn't have much of a story. It'd be more like one of those, I don't know, outposts somewhere in the middle of nowhere, and it wouldn't have the cool train vibe to it. I guess that would be. like to check in, please come with your call, your name, and did you see tonight's movie? We're talking about Snowpiercer from 2013. Okay, as I suspected, all right, final round. This one's anything you want to talk about. You can talk about technical effects. You can talk about something you missed on the first two rounds. You can even talk about some other movie. It does not matter to me, and it may be of some interest to the rest of us. So go to it. We'll start with Tony. He was at the end of the pack. Now he's at the head of the train, NT5TM. Your final comments from KE5 ICX.
Thank you, Tom. I have a little parrot on my shoulder here. Hi, Ferdinand. I think Pazuzu, the demon who eats reds and greens, ate lusciously. He feasted sumptuously on the negatives of this movie. I am sick of color casts, and this movie did not make me feel better about that. On the other hand, I was, thinking to myself, why are there so many songs about rainbows? I think that to celebrate Easter tomorrow, I'm going to watch the Muppet movie and not think, this was a pretty good movie, but it's not my thing. I'm going to go watch Kermit Fall in Love. NT5TM.
All right, that stupid song is going through my head. I curse you. Next up, Virginia, ND5F. Your final comments on tonight's film or anything you would like to discuss from KE5 ICX.
Well, if this weren't ham radio, I would sing that song to you to get it further stuck in your head. Well, let's see. Gilliam-esque is a really good term for this movie. I don't like Terry Gilliam movies. This movie was a little less quirky in general. It attempted to, play itself as serious, but there was definitely an air of over-the-top-ness to some of the more arrogant characters in it. So that's a very good descriptor of especially the crazy lady. And let's see, what else? I remembered the big bus. I don't know if I ever saw Super Train, but I do remember the big bus, and I think it was because my friend Matthew recommended it to me because he likes over-the-top comedies, and I think the whole point of it was supposed to be making fun of travel disaster movies like the airport movies and Concorde and all those kind of movies, and it's like, oh, let's have a travel disaster, but have it on this gigantic bus. So I thought that was pretty brilliant to show how stupid those movies were by having one on a bus. I might have to see if I can find Super Train. Maybe that was the inspiration for this all along. I don't know. I'd have to see it. But I don't think I saw that one. I have been on Amtrak. When I was a senior in high school, right after I graduated, my mom, I wanted to go out to Los Angeles to meet, to try to find the people who made Short Circuit, and I also wanted to go up to Oregon to see the locations from the movie. And so we got on a train in New Orleans and headed west on the Sunset Limited, and we went across to El Paso, and we got off there, and we spent a week in the Southwest doing Grand Canyon and Carlsbad Caverns and Santa Fe, and then we got back on the train in El Paso, and we went across to LA, and we were there for a few days, and I actually did get to meet the Short Circuit people, which was very cool. And then we got on the train in Los Angeles and went up to Portland, and we drove out to Astoria to see the locations from the movie. And then we got on the train in Portland, and we went all the way across to Chicago, and that took forever, but the scenery was beautiful. And then in Chicago, we changed trains and got on the city of New Orleans. So thanks for quoting those lyrics earlier, because I've actually ridden that train. And that run from Portland to New Orleans was brutal. We were riding in coach, and we were literally on the train for 3 days straight, and I don't sleep very well sitting upright in a moving vehicle, so I was pretty sleep deprived when we got home. And there are moments when you are traveling on a train where you feel kind of like this movie where you're just like, God, this is taking forever, and Amtrak is notoriously slow and always running late, so you could expect to be, by the time you got from like New Orleans to El Paso, or expect to be running many hours late. And we did go to the viewing car where you could see through the big windows and eat snacks and just look out at the pretty scenery, and we went to the dining car every night to have dinner, and it was kind of cool. I liked it, but it definitely, our 3-day run home from Portland to New Orleans, it does get old after a while. But it was really neato, and I'm really glad we did it. So anyway, I'm not going to say much else about the movie. Tony covered the stuff I had about colors, and the colors did get more interesting toward the end. The beginning was supposed to be drab and kind of green, but I don't like that either. And music was music. I don't remember it. It did its job, and special effects were fine, and I just thought it was fun to talk about my trip on the train forever ago, because I have ridden a train, and it is kind of cool. Back to net in D5F.
Well, thank you, Virginia, and thanks for those comments. I particularly like your story about the train. It's really interesting. Maybe that explains why the venue was the train, because of the claustrophobic part of it and the fact that you're stuck. I mean, that's a duh moment for us, but having been on a train and knowing that it can take forever, that you could go nuts. Compare that also with the fact that it can be a lot of fun being on a train, but how much fun can you have in one trip? 3 days total stuck on a train might not be as fun as it may appear. I mean, people go nuts though. So maybe that's part of the reason why they did it that way, because that would be the visceral reaction to anybody who's been on a train for any length of time, that it feels like it never ends, and maybe that claustrophobic frustration is what they wanted to translate into the film. Not sure, or, well, into the original graphic novel, perhaps, I don't know. Okay, next up, Sean, KB9SOK, your final comments, Sean.
Yeah, this is KB9SOK. Well, yeah, I don't have really much to say about, we've already kind of beat this movie up with its, not being very technically accurate. I agree, once again, it's another drab-looking movie. Yeah, the music was nothing special. We obviously had the special singing thing at the end, ended it with machine gun fire. So, yeah, unfortunately, I don't have any good train stories. I did get to ride on a steam engine as a little kid in the caboose for about 45 minutes. That was fun. I've never been on an Amtrak train. It is one of the things I've always thought about maybe trying, but never been on one. So, anyway, now all to say about this one. I enjoyed the conversation as always. Looking forward to the next one. Back to net, KB9SOK.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Sean. Thanks for your comments. Next up is Bill, W5BLT. Bill, what would you like to add? Is this a movie that you want to see? I think you said you would. Or would you want to watch 3 seasons of this from KE5, ICX?
Well, now I can't decide. I think I might have to watch this and watch the first episode just to see what happens. Maybe this is not quite up to Polar Express, right? The one with Tom Hanks, but it could be Polar Bear Express. Oh well, I don't know, maybe not. That's all I got. I am interested now. My interest is peaked because I'm like, how do you make 3 seasons out of this? But the seasons are shorter. Like when we were growing up in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, you could have at least a good 30, 35 episodes maybe in a season, and now 8 episodes is considered a season. So maybe there's not as many episodes as I think. Back to you, Tom, W5BLT.
I don't know. I did not know until, well, I knew there was a series because it was mentioned somewhere, someplace. I knew about it, and I knew that there was a fan base for it, but I didn't know anything about it outside of the one scene that I remember seeing while doing a little channel surfing with the guy putting his arm outside the train. But that was it. So I didn't know much about it. In fact, I still don't know much about it except after having seen this movie. So it'd be interesting. I may read some reviews out of curiosity. I might watch an episode. I don't know. Again, I thought it was interesting, but not so much so that I'm going to be the fan. I think the concept's a little bit limited and limiting. At any rate, so next week, this is an unusual one. I remember seeing this on TV when it was, I think it was maybe not a movie of the week. Most movie of the weeks were, I guess they went 2 hours. So it could have been a movie of the week. This one is called The Stranger from 1973. And it reads as follows. It says, when a spaceship passes through a vortex, he's forced to crash land. Astronaut Glenn Corbett is the actor. You remember him as Zephyrin Cochrane from the television series Star Trek, is captured and led to believe he is on Earth. After being harshly interrogated, he escapes and learns he is on Earth's twin planet Terra. One family helps him find a way back home. This was a pilot for a new television series, but was never picked up by the network. So be ready. You can probably expect a open-ended ending. I've not seen this thing in years, and there was another similar series plot for a series and by Gary and Sylvia Anderson, the Puppet People, with no puppets. I'm pretty sure these are different shows, but they had a similar plot. But the one that I remember with Corbett, I think, was the one with the picket fence and all that stuff. You'll see it when you see it. I'll send this stuff out. It's a reasonably okay copy. It's not the best. It's standard def, but it should be sufficient for watching. Next week's movie, The Stranger from 1973. And that's it, folks. I'll say goodnight to everyone. We'll do this again next week. I'm going to bed. I've been up since, 3? We'll see y'all later. This is KE5.